Hi boys and girls, today you are working on your flag art inspired by Jasper John's 3 flags painting. We're actually going to make 2 flags for our painting, and we are going to use tempera paint. We're going to water it down and actually do a tempera paint wash today. So you're going to be using some bigger brushes, and we're going to be doing actually 2 paintings today. So when you start and you get your 2 different sizes of paper, please take a pencil and write your first and last name and class code on both sheets on the back. So first and last name, your class code is your grade plus your teacher's name. That's your class code. You would do that on both sheets of paper, just on the back. First, last name, class code. Then make sure you flip them over so that you can begin. So I'm going to set my smaller paper aside, and I'm going to start with my blue part of my flag. Okay, so I'm going to be taking this big brush, touching it into my water cup so that it's full of water, and then I'm actually going to touch the end of this brush into my blue paint. Notice how it's not filling my whole brush, it's just the very tip. And then I'm going to just start to brush across the upper left-hand corner of my painting to make the blue part of my flag. And I go about to the middle here. And if I need more paint, if my paint's not quite spreading, I'm really only going to be dipping into this blue paint 2 or 3 times, no more than that. So you touch into the blue, and you might even touch into a little bit more water. And the water helps spread out and kind of thin down that blue paint. So now this time, instead of touching back into the paint, I'm just going to touch the water to continue to help me spread out my paint. And we know that this is kind of the upper square of our flag, that section. So I'm about halfway in the middle of my long painting in the upper left-hand corner, and then I go about halfway down for the blue part of my flag. And notice I didn't make a perfect square. You do not have to make an outline to make this square or rectangle shape for your flag. It can kind of look like your flag is waving in the wind if you don't make this perfect outline. So that's okay to do too. Once I have done the blue on this sheet of paper, I'm going to kind of swap my other sheet of paper out, and I can even put this on top of my first sheet. So I'm gonna again touch into my water, barely touch into my paint, and get that same corner. Now my paper's smaller, so the square will be smaller, and I really should only have to touch into my paint and my water 1 time. Again, I'm going to halfway down the middle of my smaller sheet and to about my halfway point on this part as well, not making a perfect square or rectangle here either. Okay, and it's okay that we're doing this on top of here because this will later be glued on top of this painting, so this is okay. So now I'm going to kind of set this aside again, just being careful with that wet paint, not to touch anyone with it. Now I'm going to be switching my brushes, so I'm just going to set this brush down. There shouldn't be a lot of paint or water on it. I'm just going to set it down on my messy mat and swap it out for my other brush that I will use for my red. So again, I'm going to touch into my water, touch into my paint using just the very end. And then now I'm going to make my stripes. And make sure that your first top stripe goes all the way to the edge of your paper at the top and all the way to the side here, because that's what you'll see the most of. And it's okay if it overlaps with the blue. These are 2 primary colors, blue and red. When they mix and overlap, they make our secondary color, purple. So now I just touched into the water, touched into the paint, and you can decide how thick you want your stripes to be. We're not making sure that we have the exact number of stripes. Your stripes could be really thick, they could be skinny stripes. You decide how much you want to overlap with your blue. We do want to see that there is red and there's blue, but it's okay if you want to make that secondary color purple. Okay. So I'm going to make my stripes just a touch thicker, just using water this time. I didn't dip into my red paint at all, but I just touched my water to just add a little bit more thickness and kind of a different shade into my stripes to make part of it a little lighter. And that's kind of interesting. And then I would continue to use that same red, where I'm touching into the water, touching into my paint barely, and bringing that all the way across. Remember, you want to go all the way off the edge of your painting. And notice how I've only touched into my paint and my water one time, and holy cow, I am already almost done with this painting. So I used quite a bit of water that time. I might kind of go back and add a little bit more of a darker red over top just to make parts of my flag look a little bit darker red. It's totally up to you. This can be done fairly quickly. Now you will take a smaller round brush and white paint to make your stars on your flag. And when you do this, you're not dipping into the water. You want quite a bit of white paint because this blue might be a little bit wet still. You want the white paint to kind of sit on top of it. And you can go ahead and kind of use your paintbrush to stamp on dots to make your stars in your flag. And again, we don't have to count out how many stars we do. I would just kind of do them in a line to keep it somewhat uniform. And you would do that on both of your flags that you make. So once you're done with your large one, you could do this on the other one. Just kind of stamping. You're not pushing really hard, but you are stamping down with your brush. You don't want to ever scrub into this blue because then the blue and the white will mix. So you're just kind of being gentle as you stamp on your stars. If you wanted to go ahead and make a real star, you could try that. That will take a little bit longer since you are doing it 2 times. And this time, again, you are not using water. You're just using more thicker white paint as you do this.